Welcome to Perceptions Today podcast, where we discuss consciousness in all forms. May 2023, episode 44, Gabe Miranda Sr, Roundtable discussion, The Strangeness Decoded, part 1 of 4. Gabe Miranda Sr experiences dreams, sleep paralysis, nightmares, and synchronicity.
And his wife knew that the house was particularly haunted. They knew about it, but they didn't say anything when we moved in. So the one dream that I had in that house that kicked it off for me, it was a sleep paralysis dream. I was out, I started dreaming. I was inside a house that was being rebuilt. It was kind of like, you could see like the walls were knocked out. There was plastic sheeting everywhere. It was nighttime, and I hear a knock at the door, and I open the door, and there's a family outside, and they want to come in. They don't actually speak it to me, but I know that they want to come in. So I allow them to come into the house. And
this is an instance of the conversation coming up in the roundtable discussion. Participants knew it was being recorded.
Welcome to Perceptions Today, Twitter chat number 11. It happens to be the 10th of November, 2021. And we have our guest speaker, Gabe Miranda, who will be having his chance to actually give a brief bio of himself on high strangeness and decoding the strangeness. And if you like the content that's being discussed, obviously follow the people that we mention or this actual account. And if you want to be involved in more, just follow the account in the different locations that we're on: Facebook, Instagram, etc. That's the brief public service announcements for today. So when Gabe is ready, I will let him take the floor to give a explanation of himself and why he's here today. He's also a big member of our community and been coming for a long time. Over to you, Gabe.
Yes. Good afternoon, good evening to everybody. I appreciate you showing up. My name is Gabe Miranda, and I'm a Bronx native, Bronx, New York. That's where the Yankees play. I've been living in North Carolina now for the past 15 years. Since the beginning of 2021, I've been cataloging my dreams in a I'd say like a dream diary. I'm married. I have 3 children, 2 adult and 1 teenager. My whole I'm not an expert. I'm not a writer, but I've been writing furiously since January, to the point that it's been like a weird process getting these dreams every night. Most nights it will be a short dream, and then I will get some long dreams. Like I said, I'm not an expert. I don't have medical knowledge. I don't have certain book knowledge, and a lot of the concepts that have been coming to me, I've been told, have come through. They've been written about before by people like Carl Jung, Freud, and there's other researchers. So the things that I talk about are pretty much have been experienced before and have been written about, and I was just getting into trying to figure out what's been going on. I got my notes here. So basically, in the summer of 2019, or pre-summer, I traced everything back to one particular day that we went to the cemetery to pay respects to my father-in-law, who had passed several years earlier in 2016. And then I believe several days later, I had my first nightmare. So it was very, very odd nightmare. And they began with a series of sleep paralysis. Now I've been having sleep paralysis my whole life. So I could say I had been a veteran of sleep paralysis. But the only factor that would normally happen is I'd be frozen still, but I would never see anything during those sleep paralysis events. So, and then going back to 2019, so there was this one sleep paralysis dream where I felt my toe being tugged.
Just a quick one for you, Gabe.
Yeah.
It'd be worthwhile to explain about pre-2009, what was happening with your health, and then what happened now with the next section of what's helped you to actually remember the dreams.
Okay.
that we were discussing.
I kind of skipped over it because in the blog, I kind of, all of that 2009 stuff, I get pushed back.
It's just the medical bit, the fact that you were
Right.
having the disruptive and how you got a better sleep. That I think is possibly a key to helping
Right.
people with information.
Right.
If you don't
So,
mind me interrupting and saying this,
no,
obviously.
no, that's fine. So yeah, so basically, I have sleep apnea, which for anyone who's not familiar, I stop breathing while I'm asleep. So in 2009, I was diagnosed, and I've been using a CPAP machine, which is a constant pressure air machine that basically keeps me from expiring at night. So yeah, so before that time, my sleep was very disrupted, and I don't think up until that point for several years that I've had any dream. And the lack of sleep, I was very sleep deprived. So I could be sitting in the living room watching television or talking to you, and 2 seconds I'd be out. I'd be out cold and not even dreaming, just dead out of sleep. So until I got diagnosed, I didn't have any good sleep at all. So in 2009, once I got the CPAP, it was like a breath of fresh air, literally. I think I got my first good night's sleep in over 10, 15 years. So, and then I started having some dreams again, which was pretty good. It was amazing because, like I said, being sleep disrupted was kind of like having PTSD almost. It's just like you just can't get a good night's sleep at all. You're constantly the breathing interruptions would just wake you up constantly, and yeah. So getting the CPAP machine kind of helped get me on track as far as dreaming. So in 2009, I didn't even remember that far back before the events of this year that I was tweeting out several of my dreams. I didn't write them out completely. I just said, one instance, Samuel L. Jackson showed up in my dream. So anybody that doesn't know him, he's a famous actor here in the U.S. And then another actor showed up, and I tweeted those things out. And I had continued tweeting them out for several years up until about 2016, and I just totally forgot about it. I had my dreams, and no problem. Okay, so then we fast forward again to the sleep paralysis started happening at around 2019. I had several. I'd say I had about 3 or 4 during the recurrence of everything. So now these dreams were I would say horrific. I'd say nightmares. So I'd say 95% of all the dreams that I've written about have some nightmare element to them. And I noticed that when I was doing my research, there is a nightmare syndrome that people can go through, but I don't want to categorize myself as having nightmare syndrome, at least not yet. We did have a gentleman during the Dream Talk who was talking about a PTSD medicine called prazosin, I think it was, that he uses for his nightmares.
Yeah, he was prescribed that one,
Right.
And that was the shamanic.
Right. So,
because I think you think that because you've got the extra oxygen into your bloodstream where it wasn't being cut off, that's giving you the more deeper, vivid dreams where previously the lack of oxygen wasn't giving you that kind of capability to dream properly and let your mind work, as well as giving you that liminal state of causing you to be such disruptive environment that you weren't getting a regular routine within your pattern of breathing, real life, and everything else. Right. And that allows you to suddenly become more sensitive to other things in your environment. I think you would agree on that.
Yeah, definitely. And I would like to mention, so coupled with all of the dream things, it's I just wanted to mention that I'm a sensitive also. So I'm a person that believes, I guess, that I can sense spirits, and so does everyone else in my family. So it's like,
I think it'd be interesting to see within here, if people put their hands up, whether they got the same kind of feeling for it, of even though we're using language which doesn't really describe things properly, let's see how many hands go up to say that they can actually feel something which regular people don't tend to pick up on. So we've got Renegade does, and also we've got Krista, and also, unfortunately, you're right down there in the bottom, underneath the button, Mr. A Spaceman. Yeah. So it's good that we got people within the room who will actually understand what you're describing.
right, yes. So, so one of the first distressing sleep paralysis events that I had, which was a nightmare, was actually how I met this particular, I would call him, and only because you guys had mentioned the terminology in one of the spaces, I met my daemon. And
we might have to describe that for Max, because I'm not sure if Max is going to be familiar with that term, and Mr. A Spaceman. Let's just quickly find out. Max, you can come off mute. And are you familiar with the word daemon, Daemon? And also, where are you, Mr. A Spaceman? We'll find out if you know as well.
I'm afraid not Damon, but I've had a similar experience where I saw only time sleep paralysis, where I saw a black figure, almost black fog swirling around under a moonlit skylight window, as if it was plain as day, and I wasn't aware that I was paralyzed. So that's the one time. So I can understand, but not what does Damon mean? Sorry.
Yeah, I'm just going to go into a quick definition on that one. I just want to get from Mr. A Spaceman. If you can't talk, Mr. A Spaceman, just use your peace symbol to show us that you can't, but otherwise pick up the invitation I just sent you, and then I'll just find out if you know as well, and we can figure it out.
Sorry, hello?
Hello, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Excellent. Are you familiar with the daemon, as in Daemon?
I believe so. Isn't daemon kind of like a extra-dimensional medium?
When you're actually talking about it, it's kind of a higher self, and it can be used in multiple languages. So like the Greeks would think that the gods are talking to them, and it's their daemon, which is like a muse and a higher way of giving you as an avatar instructions. So if you're in a video game, and one of the best descriptions you could have is like Lara Croft going into a maze. The first time you haven't got a daemon knocking around because you don't know anything about the maze. You run down one corridor, turn right, you get killed, but then you get respawned and brought back to the beginning of the maze. Now that you've done it once, you become the daemon telling the avatar not to go down that corridor to the right because you know there's something bad going to happen. You're now kind of giving information and making sure that they don't do it the first time. So it's a kind of informational, higher guiding spirit, whichever you want to kind of put it to. It's nothing to do with the evil side of doing it with Demon, and it's always worthwhile mispronouncing it as in daemon, so that anyone who listens then doesn't get confused and think it's the other direction. It's just basically a higher spirit and guiding you routine. And hopefully that is a clear explanation for Max. Where in the world are you roughly, Max?
I'm in Peterborough in East Anglia in England.
Excellent.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah, we're in the UK.
Yeah, I think it just occurred to me. I think we have spoken previously, briefly, after I entered the Experiencer group spaces.
Oh, maybe, yeah, when I jumped into there, possibly.
Yeah, that's where we'll be from. But thanks for that clarification. I didn't know, so now I've just learned something new. Thank you.
That's okay. No problem. We like to share, and we all grow together because this is a community which interlocks with other communities. And as I keep saying, we go from being a drop and we go into an ocean, and we move forward helping each other through and trying to help each other in many ways. Now, Gabe, when you come back in, I think you should also mention your website so that people, if they're looking and not talking, they can actually look at some of those dreams and ask you questions about it. Tamara?
Oh, just kind of jumping back to the daemon. For people who aren't aware of it or understand it, couldn't you describe it as intuition? It provides the same guidance that intuition does.
Oh, yeah, you can do. It's just trying because, as we say, language just doesn't really work properly. We can't just pin everything down. And just having some terminology that we can all reference when we're in this conversation, we know what we're all on about, and it makes sense. Any other conversation, we can obviously redefine things and say things like that. But I'm appreciative of the input. By the way, people, Paranormal Blip is in, which is great. He's got a very good podcast, as people will know, doing with all bits of high strangeness as well. Otis is in, and he's a very good artist as well. I would definitely recommend going to look at his work. And obviously Krista, and we have a few new people down at the bottom who I do not recognize. Oh, Janet, hello, how you doing? Nice to see you from last week. It's good. And obviously Greybeard is always supplying great information. Now, right, Gabe, continue.
Okay, so yeah, like Paul said, my website, or where you can find my blog, is it's on blogspot.com. It's Strangeness Decoded. It's one word, Strangeness Decoded, blogspot.com. And my first blog is Decoding the Strange. So it's decodingstrange.blogspot.com. That was the first blog, and it's has over 70 entries in it. And the second one, I've already up to about close to 30 entries over the past year since January. Going back to meeting my internal self, I should say, it wasn't very pleasant at first. And this Damon is particularly, I would say he's a particular trickster. He's very involved in taking me through the dream world and sort of rebuilding it for me. And I'll put some context into that. Over the last 35 years, I had been an alcoholic, and I had given up drinking in 2018, the summer before I got my first sleep paralysis. So toward the end of my alcoholism, I think the dreams were tailing off. I was getting more inebriated every day, constantly, every day. But since the summer of 2018, I stopped. Dead cold turkey. No more, nothing. I haven't had a drop to drink since. So I believe that when I first met the Damon, it was sort of like survival on his part, or on its part, or whatever you may say, whatever you may think. This is my experience. My dreams hadn't been frequent. There was nothing going on. It was just like sitting on the couch watching television and not even paying attention to it. So I'll describe the particular dream. So I'm in bed, dead asleep, and it's closer to morning. And all of a sudden, in the dream, I could see myself like from floating from above. And I see hands shoot up through my pillow and grab me by the throat. And then my body is turned around 360 degrees into the pillow, where I see this face looking at me, glaring white eyes, a stretched out grin or grimace, or kind of like a face of anger, and just squeezing my throat. And at that moment, I jumped up and coughed and woke up, because the experience was just so intense. And I'm like, did that just happen? And then, but then I reasoned it up to maybe I had stopped breathing despite having the CPAP on. So this could have been a way of saving me, because I think at that time my one of my straps was breaking on the CPAP. I'm very bad about buying my supplies, so my strap was kind of like held together with a few strings, and I had tied it in a knot or something. But anyway, so that was the first experience. Yeah, go ahead, Paul. I see your hand up.
So with the device, because I'm not familiar, obviously I know it gives you oxygen. How regularly do these things kind of break? How flimsy are they?
They're not very flimsy. So I would say I had the same headgear for about 2 years or 3 years, and it just needed to be replaced. So, and I'm pretty lazy about replacing those things. But actually now I'm a little bit better. So we're talking about last 2 years ago. So.
So that is fascinating on the fact that there is part of your brain that was triggered for survival. that was going through that experience and obviously losing oxygen, and it just really needed to kick in and tell you something. I think there's a lot of people in the room that we've discussed with before who've had similar circumstances where they've had that gut feeling that something is necessary to be done to survive, as we said, either accidents or just real life or medical bits, and going off and doing that. So I'm really intrigued by how that happened to yourself. Again, I think other people will indicate with 100% that they've had those kind of experiences themselves. So we've got Renegade is also one of those people. And we know the Paranormal Blip's been through several extreme things in his lifestyle and had that kind of intuitional point. So yeah, it's really good. And again, people, if you haven't been able to catch the link for Gabe, if you look in the shared section above, we've got links in there which give you to his actual blog spot, as well as his Twitter handle, of course, which you'll be able to find easily by clicking on it. And again, at any point, if you want to raise your hand and ask questions, feel free, and we will attend to those questions.
Yeah, so that was my first indication that something was going on. Like I said, I had just stopped drinking a year previous, and I was actually getting exercise. So right up until the pandemic hit, I was walking to lose weight. I lost a pretty good amount of weight, and I was feeling healthy, and things were going on, swimmingly. Everything was great. So I've since gained back the weight during the pandemic, but that's another story. But yeah, so that incident, that nightmare, and it was also an incidence of sleep paralysis, because I did wake up out of it and I couldn't move, and I was moaning. And my wife, she warned me. She said, "You're doing it again," because she's gone through several of my sleep paralysis episodes. I have another particular one that happened in an actual haunted home that we lived in that was pretty scary. But it was several years back. I would say.
I think you should actually describe that, as in the environment. I think you've gone over some of the facts of what your sleep paralysis felt like. Is there anybody else in the room who's had sleep paralysis? So if not, we can then describe more of the facts. Max had the experience. We got Tamara, Greybeard, Renegade, and Krista as well. And that's good. Does anybody want a description of that? If not, we'll move on to listening about the haunted house that Gabe was in. Put your hand up if you would like a description or not. Nice to see you, I know. Haven't seen you for a while. And again, at any point, raise your hands if you want to ask a question. So Gabe, explain about what happened in the house and what was going on.
Okay, so this house, I want to be quick. So this was a home owned by my brother-in-law. So just like what Max had spoken about, Max McCabe, that first incident was a shadow person coming through in the haunted home. Now, the haunted home was several different entities. There was an old woman, and there was a young girl. What my daughter told me about, and my wife told me about it. They appeared as inky black masses that would float along the floor at night. And I had never experienced it until I had a really bad sleep paralysis episode. And things just got really weird in that house. And of course, before we had moved in, my brother-in-law was trying to sell the home, and he couldn't find a buyer. So we moved in to help pay with the mortgage while he found a buyer. So he knew, and his wife knew, that the house was particularly haunted. They knew about it, but they didn't say anything when we moved in. So. So the one dream that I had in that house that kicked it off for me, it was a sleep paralysis dream. I was out. I started dreaming. I was inside a house that was being rebuilt. It was kind of like you could see like the walls were knocked out. There was plastic sheeting everywhere. It was nighttime, and I hear a knock at the door, and I open the door, and there's a family outside, and they want to come in. They don't actually speak it to me, but I know that they want to come in. So I allow them to come into the house, and they're afraid of something. And they come into the house, and I look out across the lawn, and I see a black form, like a human being, but like such an inky blackness. And he's standing outside on the lawn, maybe 40 or 50 yards away. So I rush the people in. I know what they're afraid of. And then as I'm closing door, I see that he's closer. He's about 30 yards away. And now I'm locking the door, and they're going down into the basement to hide. And now he's in front of the door as I turn back, and then I run down into the basement with them. So before I can shut the basement door, he comes in, and I go down to where the people are, and we're huddled in the corner, and this thing just now is right in front of me, and totally formed black mass. And I start to pray, but it's in a language that I never heard before. I start, and it seems to me like it's an indigenous language. And I'm saying this prayer or whatever it is, and I'm trying to ask it to leave, or I'm trying to warn it to go. And I'm saying this prayer over and over and over and over again. And meanwhile, my wife, who's next to me in bed, and she's waking up because I'm mumbling and moaning, and she begins to shake me awake. She's, honey, wake up, you're having a really bad nightmare. And I remember waking up, still saying the prayer in that different language, and I don't know what I was saying. So it was the strangest thing, but it was definitely because that house was haunted, and it was the first interaction that I had with whatever spirits or whatever was going on in that house. And like I had spoken to Paul before, my whole family is sensitive. Not to say that any of my recent dreams have anything to do with spirits, but I'll get back to that in a minute. So yeah, of course, things went on in the house. It affected us a little bit, and eventually we moved out in less than a year. So it was that intense that we got out of there. It was just the staircase was haunted. There was I'd say a woman in Victorian dress, and she would push you down the stairs. Everyone who had visited the house had a slip down the stairs. My wife, her grandmother, I did. And then the landing in front of the bathroom was particularly haunted. My daughter was taking a shower one day. She thought her brother had entered.
There's a question from the floor from Renegade, if you're quite happy to take it now,
Yep.
So we don't get too far away from that point.
Okay,
Renegade?
go ahead.
Yeah, for you, Gabe. Are you familiar with the artist David Lynch?
Yes.
Because he also has a project which is called The Big Dream. And this project is based on the archetypal house in dreaming. And he calls it Somebody is in My House. And it's based on the principles of Carl Jung. In these principles, you have 5 layers in the house: the basement, the first level, second level, the attic. And each layer describes a personal layer. So maybe it's very interesting to look up the archetypal house of Carl Jung. I guess you'll find
that's a very good point there.
Personal answers in that.
Yes. And I'll add to that. I've been in the archetypal house, I guess if you could call that. I've been in the basement area. I've been in closets. I've been in the kitchen. I've been in the living room. I've been in the staircases. I've been in places behind the walls. I've been in the attic space. There is one attic space that connects several houses in several different areas within the dream. So, Do
you feel this is actually exploring your own mind at this point, or greater information from somewhere else? What do you kind of feel?
Well, my feeling on the rooms and the houses, those are the repositories of all your memories, at least for me. And the way they manifest are sometimes cluttered rooms with all of my possessions, strewn about in different stages of just being in a mess. It's a messy room. And sometimes there's water leaks in all the rooms, and with faucets you can't turn off.
Do you feel that reflects that state of mind at that period in time, or something that was going on in your life? Do you think that kind of connection to it?
Well, it's just weird. It's like what Renegade said. It's a house, and it has many rooms, and for me, mine is basically untidy because I have memory problems. And I have.
I'm just curious of this. I'm going to ask both yourself and Renegade, and possibly anybody else in the room. When you've obviously been inside your house, at any point do you find yourself outside the house and recognizing it? Because that would be fascinating to see if you actually get outside of your own mind and see it from another viewpoint.
Yeah, Yeah, I have seen certain areas outside the house, and recently I've seen some other homes that could be connected. So it is pretty. It's pretty fascinating when you can see outside. But
that's good. Mr. A Spaceman has put his hand up as well there, so I think he's got a question or some information to put in within this topic.
Oh no, I was just going to say, yeah, I've been in the house and I've been outside of it. In fact, I used to have like a reoccurring dream where I was running up a spiral staircase, right? I'm assuming that was my something, my mind doing something. But eventually, the way this reoccurring dream ended was by getting to the top of the staircase and jumping out a window. And outside this window was a giant Buddhist monastery, and so I could see whatever building it was I was in, and it was a huge castle,
Did you have any connections to that, or what kind of age were you? Did you know anything? Could I just ask you, are you in your car on Bluetooth or something like that? Because the sound is a bit bassy.
Give me one moment. I am speaking, I guess I'm on my phone, so it's probably not the best.
Is it with headphones, or is it just your external?
Yeah, it's just my external mic, so I should probably get some.
Okay, that's fine. No, it's just understanding what goes on, because sometimes, obviously, there's audio issues, and we can normally help people out by saying what the best thing is to do to clean up the signal. But if you're having to be on the external, that's not a problem. But going back to the point of your spiral staircase where you're running up it, did you have knowledge about the Buddhist kind of monastery in your own head, read about it, or what kind of age was this dream at?
I would have been around 6 years old. I had no idea,
so you might.
What that was.
Yeah, so you wouldn't have. It could have been. Yeah, you wouldn't have been really fed that information, really. I mean, where in the world are yourself at the moment, or where were you born, I should say, because that would make more sense. I mean, you weren't born next door to a Buddhist monastery, were you?
No, I was born in Elmira, New York. I'm 34, so I was born in 1987.
Yeah, so that's almost like an embedded kind of piece of information, which is fascinating to hear. And yeah, it's great. And thank you very much. Always remember that this is obviously being recorded by Twitter Space themselves as well as ourselves, just so that we keep hold of good questions. If you don't want some of the information put in, just let me know and I will cut that out afterwards. But I can't do it from the other one. But if you want to continue, Gabe, continue.
Okay, yeah. So I guess we're going over the structure of the home is usually for me my home, like I said, is cluttered due to, I guess, my memory problems. And as you can hear as I speak, sometimes I'll be grasping for words. And I think that's just an artifact of being alcoholic for 35 years plus.
That's fine. Just take your time.
Yeah.
Just do what you like in talking to people.
Right. So, yeah. So as far as structures, I've been in one particular dream was a high rise building, but it was like in the 1970s. And this is where I first met the daemon as portraying himself as a small child, as I'd say like an 8-9-year-old, close to that age. And he wanted me to capture a man that was running through the hallways. Now, this man, he was dressed peculiar because he had on a winter coat. He had a satchel on his side, but he had on his briefs and socks. He didn't have pants on. So there was some reason I had to catch this guy. And my daemon, who I've...
Just a quick one. For those who don't know what pants are, because they're different in the UK and America. In the UK, it's your underwear. Obviously, in America, it's your long trousers, just to make sure that we're in the right kind of bracket. Otherwise, it could be misconstrued entirely.
Okay, so yeah. So he definitely... So from the waist down, he didn't have his trousers on. So he's running away, and he gets to the elevator. Right before he gets to the elevator, he takes a hostage. A gentleman leaves his apartment, and he gets grabbed by this guy. So, okay, now he gets pulled into the elevator, and my daemon looks at me like, "Why didn't you catch him at the right moment before the elevator door closed?" So, and he just kind of huffed at me and went running down the staircase. So, but then he looked through the window of the staircase as to say, "Come on, let's go down the staircase." So this was the first time that I had been led through the dream world by this daemon. So he was pulling me along for the ride in the dream to show me the things that I've been missing by not dreaming, is what I came to understand what was happening to me. So I go into the staircase, and there's money on the stairs. So I start grabbing the money, and as we're going down, so every few steps there's a 20, there's 100, there's change, and I'm filling my pockets with money as I'm running down the stairs with him. We're still in pursuit of this guy. We get to the street level, but at that time he disappeared, so we didn't end up catching him. But then, as we exit the street, and we can't find him, I go down a large flight of steps, which kind of like you would find in front of a museum. So the building had museum steps going down, and there was a black car there waiting. And then all of a sudden, out of the car, or standing next to the car, there was a very voluptuous, beautiful woman there waiting. And she recognizes me, and she gives me a hug and a kiss, and we get into the car. And I'm like, okay, this is great. So the dream's going along. So we're driving, and I feel like in the dream that it wasn't me as her intended, or her boyfriend, or whatever it was. It was just like a meeting. And then flash forward maybe 2 seconds later, that we're having fun in the back of the car, and then all of a sudden the car is underwater, and I see her drowning in the water, and I feel myself pulling away. And then as I'm pulling away, that scene changes, and I'm back on the staircase again with my daemon. Now, what I figured that out to be was, this was another daemon that I was supposed to know, someone who I loved but I had lost, which could have been myself. Yeah, and I see your hand up, Paul.
Yeah, this is fascinating, because when we go back to last week's conversation, we had Natural Born Alchemist, who is another podcaster. And again, I would definitely go and follow him. He's got loads of good information there. He had an experience where a woman in his dream came out of the lake, and he felt it was great loss when he couldn't get back to her. And he was trying to find her in multiple dreams over multiple nights, trying to get back into that again. This obviously affects you when you've come out of the dream emotionally. Did it affect you as much? Because he felt it was almost like a week where he felt great loss, as if he'd actually lost somebody. And I think other people within the room might have felt a similar kind of thing within dreams, that woken up and they have been so deeply touched, either joyous or distressed by dreams, that it's taken a while to actually process it.
Well, I didn't feel distressed more than I was more confused. I was like, who's this woman and why does she love me? And I, after speaking to my daughter and her husband, they both studied psychology, so in college. And my son-in-law, he studies Carl Jung, because he had an NDE and he experienced the whole ego death during his NDE, and he told me about all this stuff, and I'm like, wow. So he said to me, he says, well, that could be your I forget, it's there's the Philemon, and then there's the I forget what the woman's name is, Salome or something like that. So he said, it's just parts of your psyche. Those are parts of your psyche. So once I understood that, I said, well, maybe my daemon, who I've named Tricky, the trickster, was reintroducing me to myself and to a part of me that had lost. Because
just a quick butt in there for you. Was it meant to be anima? Anima,
yeah.
According to Carl,
Right.
Carl Jung is the feminine side, and then obviously you have the male side as well. Just thought I'd bring that up as you were asking.
Right. So so I figured out that the guy that I was supposed to chase, that was the Philemon, and the trickster, is my id, or whatever Freud would say. That's my internal self. That's me. And the woman, she's just another part of me that I need to connect to. So when my son-in-law broke it down to me, and I started thinking about it, I said, wow, it's pretty cool stuff. I mean, it's stuff that Carl Jung wrote about, and he explained in detail. Just to add, I've never read Carl Jung in my life before. I never read Freud or any psychological books. I didn't study psychology, so I didn't know any of this. So
you feel it was kind of intuitive in the way that you're doing it, because there's people in the room, like 33, he's had knowledge which has been intuitive rather than learned. And I think we probably find quite a few other people within the room have got a similar kind of thing.
Right.
If you agree that you've suddenly realized you've had intuitive knowledge when other people have to learn it themselves, use the fist symbol, and that will kind of show us, that you've had the similar kind of thing. Here we go. We got 33 has got
he could.
His hand raised. I'll bring him in.
Yep.
33, good evening to you. Welcome.
Hey, I'm late, and I'm sorry I'm late because, Gabe, you just touched on your daemon and my father who...
now 33, go back out and come back in again properly. No, if you're going to be late, just get you next time. Carry on.
Sorry. My father, who left me a tape, never really discussed very much, was an occultist and an artist. And he speaks on the daemon, okay, in a videotape he left me behind, but didn't really go into it very much. And up until very recently, I've kind of just, I don't know, had a block on a lot of this stuff, and it's kind of opened itself in the last year. So if you would just touch on that, I'd be so grateful.
Yeah. During my dream state, I guess, since I'm partially sensitive, I don't know to what degree that I'm a sensitive. I can sense weird things going on, and in the dream space, there was a point with my alcoholism that I don't think I was dreaming correctly. And there were parts of myself that I had lost being alcoholic. And then all of a sudden, this daemon appears to warn me that I had lost touch with myself. And in order to get back in touch with myself, I had to be reintroduced to these different parts of my psyche, which was Tricky, the trickster who's been taking me around, and actually he gets angry at me and fights me in the dreams. And then this woman figure who I was given the name of Martha one time when I woke up. I named her Martha, and the Philemon character, or I would call him a wizard or a priest. I haven't given him a name yet, but there's like 3 parts to that psyche. And just reading halfway through the Red Book by Jung, I was totally blown away by the similarities and the parallels to what was going on in my head. And I'm like, people aren't going to believe that I'm coming up with this on my own. They're going to think that maybe I read Jung when I was younger, and maybe I forgot about it. But it, or maybe I extrapolated it from other books that I've read, like Stephen King, Tom Clancy. I've read a lot of books, but I haven't studied before. So, there's no way I could have known about this whole thing.
Just a quick one for you, Gabe, to tell the rest of the room, because I don't know how many people have actually read the Red Book or not. We have to put a symbol up. So Renegade's read it. If you use the fist symbol that you haven't read it, if people have got the opportunity, otherwise we give a quick glimpse over it. Okay, so 33 hasn't read it. Right. So what it's looking at, and again, I'm looking this up because I thought I'd do it for the briefest explanation. Obviously, it's a red leather bound book, and that's where the name comes from. And it goes, when Carl Jung embarked on an extended self-exploration, he called it his confrontation with the unconscious. The heart of it was the Red Book, a large illuminated volume in where he created between 1914 and 1930. So he's really just going against the inside of his brain, unconscious, and trying to figure out what was going on. So again, you can use Google Books to look it up and get a synopsis about this without actually having to buy it or anything, so you can get yourself a bit of a clue for people. Again, myself, I haven't seen it at all. Renegade, you got some more information to put onto this?
Yes, the Red Book is a very short summarized version of the Black Books. So Carl Jung also wrote a huge compilation of, like Gabe also doing journals, and they are captured in the Black Books. And these Black Books are the fundamentals of the Red Book. So if you're...
But it's about 7 or 8 volumes, and they're quite big, aren't they?
Yes,
something like 200 pages each from what you were showing me.
Yes, that's exactly. And this Red Book is a small compilation of all these Black Books together. So if you are interested, you also should look for the Black Book. That's what I want to say.
Definitely good information there and worthwhile.
Yeah, so I wouldn't have known about Carl Jung if it wasn't for my daughter and son-in-law. So after reading maybe halfway through the Red Book, I put it down because I didn't want it to influence anything that was going on afterward. I didn't want to, color any of my experiences that I had been having. So it's just an experience really over the past closing in on a year. In January it'll be a year that I've been going through these dreams and cataloging them. There's a lot of interesting parallels, a lot of informational things that keep popping up, and one of them would be it would be kind of like a psychic wake up call, I would call it, where if you didn't hear through my my microphone just a minute ago, I live close to the train tracks. What do you call the cargo trains that pass by frequently. So in order to sleep, I use earplugs. So basically, I can't hear any noise in the room, outside the room at all. I use the
Hi.
Hello.
Yes?
We are new here.
Okay. Thank you.
Hang on a second. We'd just like to give you a room kind of etiquette that we have here. We keep everyone on mute who hasn't got a question. And if you do have a question, if you just want to raise your hand, then we'll bring you in. I don't know if you've seen what the topic is at the moment, but Gabe Miranda is our guest speaker talking about dreams and consciousness and connections to Carl Jung and other kinds of realms that it comes into. So if that's the kind of thing, it'd be worthwhile being in here. I think you're free to continue, Gabe.
Okay, that's great. Now that was a welcome interruption because I think I was stalling. My brain was stalling me. So yeah,
it's okay. We heard the trains, and the cargo trains is where you were, so
right.
That's where you were.
Yeah. So
got to.
In order to sleep, I wear the best ear protection because the slightest noise will wake me up, and there I'll have that problem again where I'm not getting the best sleep that I can. So my nights usually run from, I would say, approximately 10:30 to 3 in the morning. So about 5 hours. I'll sleep steadily, and then I'll have interrupted sleep afterward. But those 5 hours usually do me okay. So one of the things that was happening in the beginning, which I guess was to notify me that a dream was coming in, I would get a wake-up call. Now, the wake-up call could be anything. I'd hear a dog bark. I'd hear wind chimes. I'd hear voices. I'd hear a phrase. I one time got the phrase in a dream or just from waking. It said, "Know the hearts of the ones you love." And it was one sentence, and it woke me up out of some dreams that I was having. And it was the weirdest thing. And then I pulled the earplugs out, and I'm like, did I just hear that? So, and in most of my dreams, I don't get too much dialogue. Everything is based on feeling and intuition. Even in the dream, I'll get some dialogue, but I won't get like complete sentences and complete dialogue that goes with the dream. Yeah, Paul, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I'd like to see with other people if they are more imagery than audio within their dreams as well. And Lars has just brought up and shown me an image that he sees obviously shadow people within his dreams, and he might want to share within the actual group above the kind of imagery that he sees. Lars came last week and we had a very good discussion with him. He's now just come off mute so he can add to what I was just discussing.
I first want to respond to Gabe. Maybe you live near high voltage lines or cabling underground that can disrupt also your sleep. I just spoke on another chat with somebody who also thinks she lives in a higher electromagnetic field. You can measure that up with an EMF meter.
Yes, that's something that
it's
I was.
a tip for you to look what's happening in your sleeping room. When you go to sleep, when you have difficulties to sleep, put off your Wi-Fi router and that shit.
Right. Yeah. So that is one of the things that I came up with because I am a fan of the paranormal shows on television, and they do use the EMF meters to check. And yeah, there is the theories of groundwater.
The whole world around us is electromagnetic.
Right. So
I've sent a photo just, and maybe our host can perception today can place it so everybody else can see it. I sometimes do meditation, and then I smoke a joint, and maybe had a pint, and I put on some didgeridoo music. And when I finish with that meditation, I sometimes go out on my balcony and watch outside. And this summer, I was standing outside, and from the distance, from the darkness, there's something coming at me, like a very dark black smoke. And when it was very close to me, it turned in a degree of 90 degrees. I scared him. I don't know, because I looked really at him. It had no eyes. It had not a real mouth. It was like weird electric smoke. And then
okay,
it was,
Lars, I'll
boom,
just pause you
it was
there.
gone.
Lars, yeah? I've just put into the shared section the link that you gave me. And when you click it, if the people go up there and find it, it says, I sometimes see these shadow people. When you click it, you actually get the image that Lars is describing. So if you want to see that, it's above in the shared section. So if you want to continue, Lars, and then we'll let Gabe get back on track.
I've seen them more in my room, and in daytime you cannot always see the shadow, but then you see a glimmering that's coming right through you. So I know that spirit world is real. There's more than we can see.
Oh, definitely. I think you would find that a lot of people in here will, let's say, use the 100% symbol if they believe the same thing. We get a response from the room if they can. That's good. So we're getting Greybeard and also Tamara, and again Renegade and W. Williams RC. And we have a question here from 33. We'll come to the floor, 33.
Okay, so I have a weird family. My father's talking about daemons, and my son's talking about shadow demons. And, I haven't experienced either, but I've experienced other things. So I was wondering, my son says that, it's in our family. And so maybe he's describing it a little bit differently. And I was wondering how you feel about them.
Well, yeah.
And first off, who are you actually pointing the question to? 33, which would be a good one. 33 ruled. Where are you? Who are you
Lars
asking?
could pick that, and also Gabe could chime in after. I'd love to hear from both.
Okay, that's good. Well, at least we know where the question's going.
I've been to Suriname 13 years ago, almost 14 years ago. My girlfriend was from Suriname, South America, the big jungle. It's close to it's one area also of the Amazon. I had never.
Oh, Lars, can I ask you to just tell me the name of that area, because I'm not catching the area that you say she's from.
French Guiana, British Guiana, and there between you have a country that was colonial of the Dutch.
Okay, was it Suriname? You said something like Suriname or something, and I couldn't pick it up. Suriname. Okay, so I'm not familiar where that is on the map, so that's why it's not clicking into the.
But I was there, and it's in the jungle. The family lives. They live in wooden houses with palm tree leaves on the roofs. They live in harmony with Mother Nature. And they have, on New Year's Day, they have a ritual. It's called Winty. Then come out of the djembes, the drums. And then they start a ritual. They not worship the spirits, but the aunt of my son is called a Watra Mama. She is like a shaman. And she does a ritual. She sends you good blessings, and she asks for help. She may not. She's not allowed to ask money for it or to do bad things. It's a gift, and you are only allowed to go to do good things. She explained to me, and I hadn't had a son, and that night she had white eyes. I had more than 40 drums and djembes surrounded with me. She put on some herb waters. They prepare it days before, All kinds of herbs are in the water. They sprinkle you with it. You must drink it also. And she grabbed my hand and she said, the next time you're going to come back, you will be with a very beautiful son. And then the next person had to come, and then he got his message. Within a week, my girlfriend was pregnant. And I came 2 years later back. I first thought that she might had some good South American rum with a big smoke, because they use it also there in the village. They also use coca leaves as medicine for stings of certain insects. They have a very good knowledge of herbs in the jungle. They can survive on it, and she explained it all to me. There must be more.
Oh, definitely. I mean, that's a really nice piece of personal information, and also amazing what actually happened there. So, Gabe, can you give your response to 33 on how you feel about these things?
Well, yeah, I guess the dark shadows. I guess it seems ominous, but I don't think I've ever been injured mentally or physically by them. They're very imposing. They do come in, and as far as my my intuition or psychic proclivities or whatever that I may have, or my my family is intuitive. All of us, we do. Even anywhere we move to, we might.
We are not alone. You and Gabe.
Yes.
Are there more people now listening who also have that?
Right.
I think there are. I think we've got 33.
He's got because I'm very curious.
Yeah, 33's got his hand up, so we'll go that way. And as you know, Lars, within here, we tend to have the hands up so I can keep track of who needs to answer within that kind of not letting the questions and the answers get too far out of hand. 33?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that, I appreciate your responses. And because I've had some of my own experiences, but it lends to understand now. My son says that they're very, let's say, tricksters, and also like to play around and very intuitive, and actually been guiding him. And I have my own, higher self, which is a whole nother story. And so I really appreciate you guys, because I'm trying to understand a lot of the stuff my son is now unpacking on me. So I appreciate you guys. Thank you.
We appreciate you turning up and spending your time and coming back. Mr. A Spaceman had his hand up for a brief second, and then it's John next. Did you want to say anything, Mr. A Spaceman?
I just wanted to say that you guys are not alone. I've had very similar experiences, especially with the Banta Black beings. That's how I describe them. They're like 8 foot tall, gliding beings, and I've seen them myself. So I completely understand where you guys are coming from and why they fascinate you, because it's pretty much what launched me into the my fascination with the whole phenomenon.
Excellent. Are you actually following this account, Mr. A Spaceman?
Yeah.
You are. So have I sent you the 3 links, which is to do with obviously the mind, and then near-death experiences, and then obviously more about the brain structures? I don't think I have.
Well, I just started following you this chat.
Oh, okay, right, yeah. So if you don't mind, I can send you these 3 links, and they are fascinating because obviously we know that most people in here will have heard. I think consciousness is everything, and then you've got everything else inside it experiencing it, because you can't get away from consciousness. And the fact we can't describe things correctly because words don't do it justice, or art doesn't do it justice, and feelings, there is so much out there to actually explore and trying to figure out, because so many things overlap and can be described as the wrong thing if you don't really understand it properly. And I think that's where you're coming from as well. And I think, as we see, Mara was agreeing with me and a lot of other people, which is good. Anyway, John.
Hello. Hope you're doing well. So before I jump into my question, I'd like to give you, a heads up perception. So a lot of phones, at least the iPhones out there, have been upgraded to where you'll have more random people popping into your spaces, which is a good thing, but it can also be, as you can see, a bad thing. So what's happening is there will be this diamond icon that will just appear at the bottom of your Twitter app, and you'll click on that and you'll see all the spaces, and you can search the spaces easily. So everything will be at your fingertips. So you'll have, which is interesting. But yeah, you're gonna find in the future perceptions that you'll have people kind of like who you've never met before popping in. So that'll be a good thing. And so let me get to my question.
Well, thank you very much for that information. I mean, obviously, we've been very lucky. Those ones that came in just bounced out again, but we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, it's a double-edged sword. So my question is more physics-based. But by the way, you don't have to be a physicist to get the concept that I'm going to try to explain and ask. So there's assumptions that we can have about before the Big Bang, and one assumption could be that the physics that's here, right? The fact that you can have, electrons be kind of in a way digitized, that they're only at certain energy levels, right? It's an amazing thing. The question of why is there even stuff, right? Why do we even have matter? That's an interesting thing in itself, but that's a whole. So assuming that physics is
yeah, the something from nothing bit is the real paradox for me, and I'd love to go into that conversation. And we could go for the days and days and days.
I don't want to dive into there. Yeah. So the idea that before the Big Bang, when there was, because energy always ends up balancing out, which means before the Big Bang there was no energy, which means that matter, everything, atoms, was torn from a void. Okay, and there becomes an imbalance that gets created after the Big Bang, and in this void, we don't know what it could be, and we don't even know that. And if time didn't exist before the Big Bang, then there's that whole like what was here. It was a something, a void, nothing. So now you have this idea of your electrons in your atoms right now, right? They were torn from this void. So what I'm wondering is if that's the case, and if physics is consistent, what if there's something else there, right? What if there's something that maybe echoes, that wants to pull it back, something that creates almost like the place that ghosts could go, the place that
you're thinking like a riptide, aren't you? You're thinking of something washes in, but there's also a pull that wants to come back again.
Yeah,
that's what you're kind of thinking.
There's something about that. There's like a mirror. What's beyond the looking glass? So you have this idea, right? So then, so my question is, do you think that is it possible, right, that these spirits or these demons or these angels could exist somehow in the in-between, between the void and the actual physics world that we live in, right? We can sense and atoms and molecules. Is there something there, right, with like, as in they're slightly out of phase? Anyway, that's my question.
I think you could be true on that one. Are you aiming that at Gabe, the rest of the room, or where, John? Because then I can pitch to the right people.
Yeah, I think I understand what John's talking about as far as the in-between.
Yeah, I think also you want to look at it on the fact of membranes as well. If you look into membrane theory, where you have universes in between, if you just imagine you're looking at sheets of paper vertical, and in between those gaps are different kinds of realms. And they were looking at it that way for membrane theory. It's a very fascinating thing. If you just check it up on YouTube, you can get some very good, simple explanations about it. Once we've got there, we'll get Lars in there as well.
Something that's in Geneva, CERN. A lot of people think that CERN in Geneva, the Hadron Collider, was invented to investigate the Higgs boson theory, the God particles theory. That's an old theory from the 80s. The Hadron Collider is the biggest machine we ever invented, we have made. It's down below. It's very high voltage, 380 teravolts. I studied the thing more than 10 years, 15 years. They have invented Atlas to try.
Lars, because you've got technical knowledge, most people probably don't know your background. So if you can give a quick 30-second overview of your background, then people will understand that you know what you're talking about.
At a very high level. I've done military bases. I've done GSM antenna building. I was assistant measurements within 3 months. Then I was into telecom copper networks. Then I've done optic fibers. And I've done very special locations in Holland.
So you come through with the knowledge, you see. What I want to do is with you being part of the community.
Radiation. I've got knowledge about quantum physics because it interests me.
that's why I like to make sure that people know about when people start speaking that they've got a broad knowledge base that we're interlocking with, and it's just not somebody coming up with some weird theories which can't be proven. So that's why I wanted to make sure that you had that.
When I go up to these GSM antennas, all the technology we have been given was already developed in the military complex. When I go to a military antenna, which have a higher reach, and I have to do inspections, then I have to put it out because the radiation of these antennas, and they don't put them next to where the soldiers are. They put them a little bit away because they know what these radio waves do. They are not good. They have a euphonics reports only for the military radar. That proves that when you're being radiated at a short distance with 10 megahertz, and then I'm not talking about 10 gigahertz, what they want to shoot at us now with these antennas. 10 megahertz is already enough to cause for all the rats and mice in the labs to get cancer. That's already proven. I was not allowed on a standard GSM antenna to work for 2.5 hours with the installation online. Let's call it that. When I had to work longer, I had to go out of the radiation and had needed 2 hours rest. That was in the 1G time.
That's fascinating. I have to say that we're going to bring it back so that we don't lose John, because I know you might have time issues. If Gabe can come back about the fact of the backwash of where things might be living between, say, the membranes or other parts of the universe.
When you get that snow on your television, that's what they're trying to do. They put much more snow in you. Because you are not made of flesh and blood. You are made of molecules, up quarks, down quarks. They already do.
Well, yeah, you're made of energy, which is the main thing. Yeah. So if you're quite happy, Lars, I'm going to get back to Gabe so he can respond to John, because I'm not sure if John can stay for the full time, and we'll get that one going. So Gabe, if you want to come back.
Yeah, I was doing like you. I was trying to look for the button. What John was speaking about, the space in between. There's been times when I'm in one of these dreams where I could see like my daemon is trying to use disguises to disguise himself, and it would get like a pixelated form, and in dreams it's weird. You don't know what's behind you. You can only see what's in front of you, but you can fold within yourself and be looking behind you, and then you can be above yourself, and then you can be in yourself, and then you can jump to other points of view. So it's a weird feeling, and if you go through it, you won't understand it until you've actually experienced it. So it'll be like you're watching a movie, but from all different angles. And with the space in between, it's only something that I've come to understand where in this actual group, they've been discussing quantum consciousness. I had I would say like a theory that when you're having an NDE and you're doing the life review, there's kind of like a separation from reality. You're not in your physical body, and your consciousness is really just uploading the experience of your life.
You'd also say you're outside of time at that point as well, wouldn't you?
Yes. So you're outside of time. So that would be the in between space on almost a cosmic level. So when we do step outside our bodies, that's what's happening. But I can't speak to that wholly because I've never had an NDE, but I've been reading about it and listening to everyone's experiences. That's kind of what I'm getting when I hear it with the quantum consciousness and the quantum universe.
Oh, by the way, we have to say good evening to the Natural Born Alchemist. He's turned up, which is nice. I've mentioned him before. Go follow his podcast and take a few episodes and sample him. Always worth a good listen. And onwards and upwards, Gabe.
Yes, I'm going to have to step out of the room for a few minutes. I have to go pick up my dog from the vet. So if hacking,
that's okay. We can continue conversations, and I will put a more thread in on dreams if people are quite happy with that, as that's the kind of conversation.
That's good.
Roughly, how long are you going to go for?
It should be no more than half an hour. A little bit less.
Will I be able to talk for half an hour with people in here? This is going to be a hard one.
That
right.
That wouldn't be too hard, people. All right.
No, thank you.
All right, I'm gonna step out.
Right.
Okay.
So I'm just going to see if Natural Born Alchemist wants to do a quick self-promo for himself while he's here. If he can't speak, Alex... Oh, no, you've taken speaking capability, so you can speak. If not, I'll get the paranormal blip up and he can give him a quick burst of a promo for himself. I don't think Alex can actually talk at the moment. Greybeard, I haven't heard your dulcet tones for a while. Can you speak?
Hi, I can speak. How you doing, Paul?
Oh, doing well. It's nice to see you. Things going well for yourself?
Things are going great. I'm enjoying this talk. You made a lot of sense, Gabe did, with the with the houses. It was kind of almost enlightening for myself, because I've had similar dreams within familiar yet not familiar in my normal life houses. So, in the dream, the houses are very familiar and they're large, they're spacious with many rooms. And I never really thought of it until he had mentioned something, relating it to the mind. And it makes a lot of sense with my dreams. So I'm very appreciative of this talk.
There's also another good point that Renegade was bringing up with houses, and we discussed last week. It's all about memory palaces, where you actually have that room and you start putting items in there to jog your memory, to help you self-remember. And that's also another fascinating kind of topic. So, Paranormal Blip, do you want to do a quick promo for yourself while you're here? I say these things and tumbleweeds go past and no one picks up when it says that.
Sorry, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, you're fine. Yeah,
fantastic. Yeah, FOMO, listen to Paranormal Blip. My name's Pete, by the way. Nobody calls me Pete here because I don't say my name is Pete. Although you know my name is Pete, Paul, but you're so polite. You always never call people by their names. But please call me Pete.
Well, because we're in here with icons, it gets confusing.
No, totally, yeah. I don't mind if you call me Paranormal Blip. But hello, everybody. My name's Pete. Nice to see you. I was just trying to find this. So Jeffrey Mishlove won Robert Bigelow's competition over the last 10 days or so, and it was published in the last couple of days. And it's really interesting, talking about near-death experiences. It's essentially Robert Bigelow, the kind of, it's kind of like a fictional character almost, the billionaire space explorer and paranormal investigator. He launched a writing competition, a kind of essay writing competition, and Jeffrey Mishlove from New Thinking Aloud won it. And essentially, it's 98 pages long kind of essay, and embedded in it are videos of mainly, the vast majority of them is Mishlove interviewing people within the kind of paranormal, the parapsychology field, and the call for the essays were evidence of consciousness surviving bodily death. And Mishlove does an incredible summary of, the kind of relevant research in this area, going back decades, obviously, So a lot of the kind of people that we're familiar with are in there. And I was just trying to kind of get it together to share it with the group. It takes ages for me to do that kind of thing, like an old man, like typing away, But anyway, so that's kind of on my mind because
I've got the link and I can put it into the shared section. So I'm just grabbing it now.
Thank you, Paul. I'd appreciate that because it's definitely worth reading. It's quite a long thing. I haven't had time to read it all. I'm only about halfway through, but it's really, really, meaty piece of research. So yeah. So that's good. I'm really enjoying today's spaces. It's really good. I'm loving the conversation, and I might jump off now because I've got a few things to do, but I'm listening, and
that's fine. I'm just going to share it now because I've managed to get it up and running, and again, it's a free thing, so don't worry about picking it up. people. It's not a copyrighted bit. Also, Anthony Peake was in the 200 list of doing that. And one thing, again, people, if you're here for the first time, Anthony Peake is a friend of the community and comes in, and we have an announcement. Dun, 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 dun. On the 15th of December, we will be doing a 5-hour session with Anthony Peake UK time, split into 2. Follow us, keep in the loop, and things will be going on. And I've missed the button that I wanted to press. So we will obviously see you still running around Paranormal Blip, and also Pete, if Natural Born Alchemist wants to say something. But then we go to Lars, because I know he's got his hand up at the moment, because I can now see him, because I was looking elsewhere when I was trying to share this link. Just seeing if it went into the bit. Did it go into the shared? People, we'll have to find out. Lars,
I have family in Gloucestershire.
Gloucestershire, yeah, okay.
Yate Rock, Roslyn Way. I've been there. It's a very beautiful country. I had also spiritual experiences when I was there. It's very beautiful. Be proud of your country, and I'm happy.
Thank you.
And I'm happy to be with some polite, because it's not always polite on the internet.
I know, we've been very lucky. The only time we've had people that have just bopped in is today, and we've had 11 of these chats which have gone between 2.5 hours to 5 hours, and those are the only 2 kind of people who have just bounced in, been peculiar, and lucky enough, gone away, and everything else is nice and tight. Our community is very respectful.
A lot of people always think the English are rough people, but I don't know them only as very polite people, waiting for the turn, something to say, and I'm happy to speak sometimes here.
I'm glad you're part of the community. Again, Williams, do you like to be referred to as Williams? You can come off speaker. Well, come off mute, I should say.
Just Will or Williams, it doesn't really matter. This is kind of for Lairs, question. Now, the particle accelerator has always been on my mind, and the possibilities that could come from it. I understand what they're doing with it. Now, with that said, have you, in your research of this particle accelerator, do you think they've ever tried to manipulate energy to repel the particles for space flight and whatnot?
The machine was invented to research the 7 dimensions, and I see that as the 7 heavens. And they wanted to know what is the glue that keep all these particles together, so it looks like matter to us. And at last, it was invented to find shells. It's like a very, very big, very sensitive photo diode.
Lars, did you say cells as in CELLS? Yeah.
Yeah. Now cells. You see, every molecule as a cell. A molecule has no shell, and the strange thing is, it's vacuum. So when it's vacuum, it must shrink, but it doesn't.
Now, Lars, would you say that it's not really a vacuum, it's more of a plenum, because it has actually got things in it? It's just our strange way of language of saying that it's got nothing.
There's no matter. Because when you have one molecule under a super high definition electron microscope, you have to balance it, because it's very wild. It's all
That's
electric.
True, but surely you need something pushing away to give you that void.
There's a
You'll need
scientist,
something to give that.
He says, when you put all, because we put in some magnetic fields, we must keep it in that molecule, we must keep it in place with magnetic fields, and with very low temperatures. Then only we can study this. And what you then see...
You're talking about 0-point field energy at this point, aren't you?
Yes. It's all electric. Fast matter doesn't exist. Elon Musk drew a microscope, and he knows also, and he has also stated, the chance that we are not living in electric simulation is 1 of 10 billion, he said.
The interesting thing about that is that we have no hard edges, as I've said before. We are all energy of some kind. It's how our consciousness is anchored in
the light of
our
God
bodies
is
at this
in
present
you.
time. Oh, yes, definitely. When you're going down to 0-point energy and you're looking at the biophotons and the microtubules of the brain, which is always fascinating. Hopefully we're not losing anyone. If anyone's got, if we're using a definition that you're not used to, please put your hand up and we'll get it down to a simple bit. I see 33 Rules got his hand up, and then we'll come back to Williams. 33.
Yeah, this question's for Laws, since we're on the subject of the CERN, the Hadron Collider. I know they got a lot of crazy stuff they're doing down there with rituals, and the thing that I'm interested in is, weren't they trying to collide two particles together to see if they could somehow see what happens? And then, from what I understand, they failed. But could you explain that? Do you know what I'm talking about?
They are doing a lot of weird stuff there, also rituals. I saw that. The last experiment they did, you must find it back on their website, but they shot photons and matter, and it depends on the source how fast the photon or the matter is. So matter can be faster than a photon, and a photon also can change into an electron.
Does that answer your question, 33? And then we'll go to Williams.
Yeah, that's fine. I was just wondering. I find that whole thing fascinating. Thanks for you contributing.
You're a wave of particular molecules, a waveform on a frequency, and it's really weird when you really start getting into Max Planck, Nikola Tesla. Quantum physics was for Einstein a nightmare. That's for sure.
Definitely when his actual equations were proving things like black holes and he wasn't actually believing in black holes. Williams, come to the floor and put your question or answer in.
So the what you said about, I said, did they use the particle accelerator to experiment with, say, shield or with energy to repel the particles? And I guess that's a no. They were more interested in what repels them by themselves. So I figured that would be leading up to like a shielding or some sort to repel particles. And also, with that said, I want to go off a little bit about consciousness. Oh my, tripping over my words here.
It's okay. We have trouble with our teeth here as well. Don't worry about it. We stumble over words left, right, and center.
So, with that said, the initial Big Bang. So, would you say that energy beings were kind of around first, and then we showed up later, and that's why they're so wise, and we listen to them, and they're so spiritual, but they've just been around since the beginning?
No, in my opinion, and again, this is just my opinion, there are loads of opinions out there. I reckon consciousness was first before you started getting matter coming in. But then again, I feel there's a paradox because you can't get something from nothing, even if you go back to the origin point. And that's where I'm going to have a weekend where everybody comes in and just gets locked into a room and we just have a fantastic kind of 48 hours of just insanity when we try and discuss that one.
Cool. I want to be there.
So follow us, and we normally try to skim over topics within an environment so that people can dive off, and it doesn't seem like we go too down the rabbit hole. Again, we do go down the rabbit hole quite a bit, but we try to make sure that everyone comes in level playing ground, and hopefully you feel the same. Have you been to one of our chats before? I don't think I've seen your icon before.
First time. It just popped up on my feed thing, and I joined.
What I would say to you is, as you said, that you like consciousness, and that's one of our topics which kind of gets us going. If you're following me now, there is a set of 3 links I give to people just to get a gauge of where they come from with their knowledge so that we can share backwards and forwards. So I'm just going to see on the follow list to see if you're in there. Can't see you at the moment. This is interesting. Oh, there you are. Right. Gotcha. So I'm just going to send you a quick message, and again, you could ignore this if you want. You don't have to do it now. It's hopefully, there's 3 links that I've put in there. One is by Anthony Peake. I don't know if you know the author or not. Williams?
No, I do not. Sorry.
Okay, so he's a researcher and he backs everything he finds with all the papers and books and scientific reference. So there's nothing that can be deviated on. If he says he's speculating, but otherwise he'll back everything up in his books and also YouTube videos. So the one I've given you is called Internal Light. There's a lot of people in here who've seen the internal light. Now watch the response when I say, if you like the internal light, do the 100%. If you don't like it, hit the old fist button, everybody. If you can, hit the icons. One person, two people. Good. Normally, it should have just rippled across quite happily. Oi, Greybeard, you must have liked the internal light. You just put up the symbol for you didn't like it, Greybeard. Don't make me come over there.
I misheard you. I'm sorry.
I was about to say, don't do that to us. So anyway, he's coming on the 15th of December to talk for 5 hours. Previously, he did a 5-hour talk in October with us. We were so privileged. He's never done a 5-hour one between any other podcast or anything else out there. So that is a date to put in your diary. If you're in America, I take it, Williams?
Sorry, I missed that. It broke up a little bit.
I take it you're in America, yeah?
No, I'm a Canadian, eh?
Okay, that's fine, but you're on that side of the globe. So on the 15th of December, it's just if you're in Australia, I'd have to say it'd be on the 16th of December. I was just trying to make sure. I didn't hear any O's said yet, so that's why I didn't pick up on you. So the other one after that is Dr. Penny Sartori, who, if nobody knows, she is a Welsh woman who started off her nursing career, then got experience to weird things with people having near-death experiences. Then she's had done over 21 years study within this environment, got a PhD, and is a friend of ours as well. And she's got a half-hour conversation there with Anthony Peake at one of the venues in the UK back in 2015, which is very fascinating about consciousness and near-death experiences and how people were and how information they gained from the environment when they shouldn't have had that information, but then was confirmed by other people who came in to the environment. Then the Stuart Hameroff giving, again, I'll just find out from yourself, Williams. Are you familiar with Stuart Hameroff?
No.
He's an anesthesiologist.
No.
So he's an anesthesiologist that basically, as he says, they know the drugs to put you out, they know the drugs to bring you back, but in the meanwhile, they don't know where your consciousness goes. He was looking at, in your brain, as you know, there are neurons, yes?
Yes.
So inside a single neuron, there are thousands of what they call microtubules. Have you heard of microtubules?
I heard of them, yeah.
Right. So if you imagine you're looking down on straws, each side of the microtubule will be giving off biophotons, as in luminescent light from that structure. Have you heard about biophotons?
I'm picturing it in my mind, but yes, I have.
Okay, so DNA gives off light as well. So internally, your body is giving off light. And when they were cooling the brain structures down of mice to get down to the neurons, they were trying to get down to absolute zero and see where energy would start to fall off. But they started to find that in those microtubules, they were still pumping out light simultaneously, not as in a sequence, but just all the time, causing an interference pattern. And they're thinking, because they couldn't get them down to absolute zero and stop them functioning, that possibly they were pulling up 0 point energy from another location outside of our universe, which is fascinating.
And
this is one of the conversations.
I wonder if anybody did that stuff. I'm glad that you sent me these links and stuff and we're talking, because it always occurred to me, like, dude, doesn't anybody figure that out? Has anybody, did this research? And now you're telling me there has been.
Yeah, so those three ones are literally a half hour each. Most people, I give them to, and if you don't get in past 5 minutes, that's fine, you can just ignore it. But most people will suddenly find that they get pulled in, sucked in. They're heavy, rich in information, and it's a good basic grounding to find out where we know information with each other and we can talk about it. And as you see, the community here has been coming back since September. We've only been giving these kind of conversations, and we've grown. We swap information via Twitter and Instagram and Facebook. And again, we interlink with other researchers and podcasters, and we share what we find. And again, we have a lot of experiences within our group, whether it be very peculiar, just biological things. And again, we talk about pain management as well. And it's just how the world is viewed. And again, as the name says, perception. We're trying to figure out how it all works. Everything's on the table. We even have points of view that don't interlock with each other, but nobody argues. And we just see what we can find from that and see if anything else evolves from it. So if you're happy with that, join our community.
I will. Excellent. Yeah, for sure.
So, Esterbel, welcome back. Nice to see yourself, Ian, down there at the bottom. If you want to talk, it's fine. What I'll do is I'll just see if Natural Alchemist wants to give himself a promo. Otherwise, I'll bring it back onto Dream Topics until Gabe comes back.
No, I'm eating. Thanks.
Congratulations. So, Natural Born Alchemist, I'll do a quick brief one for him. He will go in and do interviews on people where it comes from the paranormal or whether it's indigenous tribes, talking about how they have their own culture along with how other people are imposing the wrong kind of things on their culture. Again, with psychedelics, talking about them in the way of a respectful manner and not in using them as recreational, going out on the streets and taking things. It's in a medicinal kind of point of view, as well as a few other viewpoints. And I think that's the best way to say what Natural Born Alchemist is about. Go to his podcast, which is in his bio link on here. Actually, it's not there. Why is his link not? Yes, it is. Yeah, there it is. It's in his link tree. Couldn't see it. It's too closed. I was going to say, we have to promote all the people we know. Right. Okay, so I just want to see if everyone's been enjoying the conversation so far. If you do, use the 100% sign. Oh, nice to see you, Ray. Haven't seen you for a while. That's good. If you want to talk, Ray, don't forget, put your hand up, dead inside, do the same. Anybody else? Right. So I prepared last week a few topics of conversation on dreams, which we didn't get round to, even though we went for 5 hours talking about these things. It was brought up that kind of a best way to actually have a viewpoint of what consciousness and dreaming is all about. I went off and found out this information. Now, I'm reading it, so it's not all from memory. And put your hand up at any point if you want to jump in. So dream consciousness is defined by a theorist of dreaming sciences. And this guy was called J. Allen Hobson. He was also a medical individual.
To help our research and understanding, leave Perceptions Today's podcast reviews, subscribe to the podcast, along with the other social media accounts, and share. Come and join our live events. That way we can get together and have thoughtful discussions along with advancing our understanding of concepts as we go along.